In days of old, in age of wealth, when men would boast to others' health, when maids would sing and children play, the elders reigned, the folk affray. The sacred flame was kept ablaze, the Gofar spoke through fogged haze. Salazar hon standa solio fiari, a hall from the sun in rooms of Sindri. The folk will rest at cycle's end, when gods are gone and men must fend, their own to keep by flight or kill, or laws to write by Woden's will. An ancient time will see no more, the halls of gold now huts of straw. The children scream, our women cry, the men fall to their knees and die. An age of swords, an age we share, the axe will hew all foemen fair. The storms will rage and tear the skies, the chains will break, the wolves will fly. Yet some will spins, each time in turn, all evil will combust and burn. The flaming sword of wrath none mourn, for battle bleeds a beauteous dawn. The Gofar's torches fell aside, the fire flicked, then ebbed and died. The folk were taken, stripped of self, no more their men would toast to health. Fear not the time the gods' demise, nor pine for aeons left behind. Our nations, tribes and holy lands were birthed from ash by heathen hands. The sacred flame eternal burns, 1,000 years for evil spurn. Our men have rose, go far to cry, our time has come, at cycles nigh. May spear be cast and war runes read, may prayers be made to heroes dead. May priest be priest and fane be fane, may noble men forge caste again. A house divided shall not stand, a holy place to build by hand, by flesh and brick, by steel and flame, a space for gods to come again. Invoke their names, each day you must, gods of battle, chew the just. Woden frenzied, mighty Thor, return to us the spirit of war. Good health to you, and welcome to episode 2 of the Fire and Hammer podcast, The Spirit of War. I am Gofi Charlie, and I will be hosting this conversation. As you likely felt in the poem read at the start, and indeed you may already know, our religion is not a strictly peaceful one. This is transparently so in our accounts of both gods and heroes alike, the legendary life of Sigurd Sigmundsson in Fafnismal, Beowulf's slaying of the gruesome Grendel in his namesake poem, or even to our gods of combat, Woden, Chu, Fënor, and even Saxneat. Martial prowess is fundamental to our understanding of our religion. Yet we live in a time of dying peace. What hindrance is this on the expression of our faith? Is the national an expression of the clanships our ancestors died for? Are we compelled to take up the sword, so to speak, for our native countries? And of most importance, what lessons can we, as modern pagans, learn from the accounts of our gods and heroes in the spirit of war? All of these questions shall be answered in 5 key sections of our episode as below. Chapter 1, War Spirit, defining the spirit of war and its importance in our sacred texts. Chapter 2, Serpent's Bane, the Eddic story of Sigurd, the slaying of the serpent Fafnir, and the just murder of the coward Regin. Chapter 3, Giant's Bane, the Eddic story of our god Fënor and his quest to reclaim the stolen Mjolnir from the giant Thrym. Chapter 4, Troll's Bane, the saga of Beowulf, his great deeds, and the fidelity in the young Wiglaf. Chapter 5, The War Pagan, the 21st century pagan generation, war as virtue, and how to break a warless life to honour our gods and become heroes. Whether sat in comfort or ready to take battle in the Temple of Iron, I hope you enjoy this episode. Chapter 1, War Spirit. To explain the spirit of war, we need first give context to each word, what we mean by war and what we mean by spirit. War, as put forward in the Oxford Dictionary definition, is as follows. Quote, a situation in which 2 or more countries or groups of people fight against each other over a period of time. End quote. We can compare this to the Merriam-Webster's varied definitions, which provide a more flexible characteristic. Quote, a state of hostility, conflict, or antagonism, or a a struggle or competition between opposing forces for a particular end. End quote. Of these definitions, the key concepts are clear in both: fighting, hostility, conflict, antagonism, struggle, competition. All emphasise the opposition of one to another, man to man, group to group, nation to nation. The underlying factor in war, therefore, is found in the core aspect of struggle opposition, the attempted overcoming, in some manner or form, of one force to another. This underpins war in the abstract. In spirit, however, we see a different tone altogether. From the same Oxford Dictionary, we get to the below. Quote, the prevailing or typical quality, mood or attitude of a person, group or period over time. End quote. To contrast, we see an again more loose definition in the Merriam-Webster's equivalent. I quote, an animating of vital principle held to give life to physical organisms. End quote. We again can see the fundamentals of these definitions. Quality, mood, attitude, vital, principle, life. In this vein, the synonymous context of the word is as ethos or principle, as opposed to soul or psyche, or even literal spirits, as White's. There is very much an overlap in these concepts, namely in regards to the soul with vitality and life, but it should remain clear what we're referring to when we say spirit in our terminology here. It is thus that we can define the spirit of war, or war spirit, as something akin to the prevailing principle or quality of struggle opposition, an essence of hostile conflict from one force to another. Thus we have defined the spirit of war in its own right. But what of our sacred texts? Is it not so that paganism is a religion of peace and love, as interpreted by Wiccans and other New Age adherents? Paganism is, to put it in blunt, a religion of peace and war. From blood-soaked Saga to Edda after Edda, both man and God exist in a never-ending cycle of conflict and resolution. For every thing held, a spear was cast over an enemy host. For every thrift maintained, a blood feud erupted. For every tax collected, a weregeld was paid. As the Latin saying goes, sivi pacem para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Let it be so that our understanding of the spirit of war is not conflicted with a spirit of peace, but tempered. Woden's battle shall reap Ingwi his harvest, for each violent deed births prosperity, and vice versa. I will now give you a summarisation of 3 stories, and extrapolate from each the spirit of war and convey its importance. I encourage you to read these in full if you have not done so, and will provide reference to all 3. Chapter 2. Serpent's Bane. The Fafnismál, or the Sayings of Fafnir, is an edict telling of the hero Sigurd Sigmundsson's slaying of the serpent Fafnir. It is part of a wider collection of poems that chronicles the life of the legendary hero and his fated demise. The ballad is summarised as such. Sigurd sets out with Regin, brother of Fafnir, to seek a swift death of the dragon and secure his riches. Sigurd is given the sword Guram for this purpose, a weapon reforged from the shards of his father's sword. It is said to be so sharp that it can split an anvil with a single strike and can cut wool just by applying a gentle stream's current against it. Upon reaching the dreaded worm's lair, Sigurd makes work to dig a trench to trap Fafnir within. The serpent emerges and made battle with Sigurd. Venom was paid in kind with Ram's razor edge, and Fafnir was slain, his heart pierced deep. Sigurd converses with the dying worm, who warns him of Regin, his brother, and his impending betrayal. Regin emerges, seemingly from hiding, and praises Sigurd's win. They each take drink of Fafnir's blood, and, as Regin lies to sleep, Sigurd learns the language of birds. 7 nuthatches nearby taunt Sigurd, and repeat Fafnir's warning. Regin shall kill Sigurd if he does not act. Sigurd swears that both brothers are bound for hell and, taking up Gram, slays the sleeping Regin. He drinks of the two's blood, claims Fafnir's treasure trove, and leaves the lair. Of the riches gained, none is higher than the Agisjarmor, the Helm of Terror. It is beyond clear that the fate of Regin is of as much importance, if not more, than that of Fafnir in this story. The impending warning by both snake and bird is enough to drive Sigurd to take a second life. The seeming unease was likely compounded in Sigurd's mind by the coward Regin praising his valour, while he himself disappeared during the conflict. The spirit of war in Fafnir Small is our model for the reward of these two warriors. Both set in their slaying of Fafnir, his death acts as our struggle opposition for the ballad. Sigurd succeeds in this task, while Regin hides away until after the fact. The reward, in equitable parallel to the spirit of war, is Regin losing his head and Sigurd claiming the prize. He laments Regin's cowardice in Fafnir Small 29. I quote, "Brave men better than cowards be, when the clash of battle comes, and better the glad than the gloomy man shall face what before him lies." Thus we see the spirit of war as judgment. Act within its principles bravely, or a friend's wrath may fall upon your treacherous blade. Chapter 3. Giant's Bane. Our second story is that of the Frimskaveda, or the poem of Frim. It is an Eddic account of how Funor retrieved his hammer, Mjolnir, from the giant king Frim. For the purpose of the retelling, I will use the anglicised Scandinavian names of the gods. Thor awoke one morn and found Mjolnir missing. He bristled with fury and approached Loki and Freya in turn to locate his hammer. Freya offered her enchanted feather cloak to aid in the weapon's retrieval, which Loki used to fly to Jotunheim. He made parley with the giants and their king, Thrym, to know of its whereabouts. The cunning Thrym informed Loki he had taken Mjolnir and buried it deep beneath the earth. He made his demands clear: the hand of Freya in marriage, or the hammer will never be found. Loki returns to the realm of the gods and recites the words of Thrym. Freya scoffs at the notion, as it would insult her reputation, leading onlookers to see her as licentious. The gods are called to assembly, and the plan is devised. Much to his objection at the unmanliness of the deed, Thor agrees to wear the bridal veil and pose as Freya. Loki takes on the role of his serving maid. Thor's sacred goat cart is mounted, and they ride to Jotunheim. Upon their arrival, Thor eats his huge fill of the feast food and drinks 3 turns of the mead horn. Thrym remarks on his supposed bride's great hunger, to which Loki notes Freya Thor has fasted for several days. Thrym seeks then to kiss the bride. He recoils in fear at the thunderous, furious gaze and compares it to fire. Loki answers that Freya Thor has not slept in several days. The same longing for Jotunheim abated such, as with the fasting. As the bridal fee is requested, Thrym brings out Mjolnir and places it on Thor's lap, a consecration to hallow the marriage. Thor roars in laughter and, wielding the mythical hammer, massacres Thrym and his giant host. Multiple lessons can be drawn from this sacred story, but none more in line with the spirit of war than that of justified combat. Prior to any talk of deceptive intuition, Loki first makes honest inquiry to the Giant King in hopes of having the hammer returned. It is by Thrym's deceit and the theft of Mjolnir that the gods engage in equal measure. An eye for an eye is the law of the gods, and fire with fire shall meet. The spirit of war is thus found in Frimskaveda in that of justified retribution. You are free to lower the standards of honourable combat, but your foe loses no honour in doing the same. The high road is a road to death when your enemies act as wolves to an ambush. Frimskaveda 33, the final line, sums it up bluntly. And so his hammer got Odin's son. Chapter 4. Troll's Bane. Of the account of Beowulf, we see reflected a tale of heroics beyond measure. The eponymous hero, Beowulf, is a Geat adventurer who arrives in Daneland to aid them in their plight against the dreaded monster Grendel. His tale is composed in the longest written Germanic pagan account and is in and of itself a saga. We will recite a summary of the Beowulf poem. Beowulf, the Geatish hero of old, travelled to Daneland at the behest of Hrofgar, king of the Danes. Arriving at Hjorot, he sought counsel and learnt of their woes, the violent assaults on their steading by the gruesome troll Grendel. Waiting at the hall for the creature, Beowulf does combat and kills the monster bare-handed. He returns to other lodgings near Hjorot. Grendel's mother, finding the death of her son, swears vengeance and attacks the Lord's Hall in a night raid. Beowulf, Hrofgar, and the Danes march on the monster's lair to find the wicked creature. He fails to pierce her thick hide with a lone sword and is almost killed by the mourning mother. Seizing a giant sword from the wall, he decapitates her and emerges victorious. His heroics are rewarded with great gifts as he departs Daneland. He returns to Geatland and becomes the king of the Geats. 5 decades pass and Beowulf is forced to face a dragon rampaging through his lands. Retribution for a theft by one of the hero's slaves. Beowulf seeks to face the dragon alone and, overwhelmed, faces certain death at the hands of the serpent. Beowulf's men flee in fear, barring the most courageous, Wiglaf. Wiglaf and his lord slays the beast, but Beowulf is mortally wounded in the fight. A great pyre is built for the hero king, and his kingdom eventually falls to ruin. Much as in Frimskaveda, many branching narratives course through this rich poem's veins. The spirit of war can be found at several points, but most strongly in the figure of Wiglaf. His name is a compound word, from the Old English wig, meaning war or battle, and luff, remainder or legacy. This is reflective of his deeds in the dragon fight. While the host fled, Wiglaf stood by his lord as the remnant of valour, the last of the warriors. It is telling that Wiglaf admonishes the warriors on their return to find Beowulf dead. They acted forsaken in their oaths to their king when he needed them the most, with only Wiglaf remaining true. The same fate seems to befall each in equal measure, however, as Geatland soon falls to raids without its strong-armed lord. Let Beowulf's deeds and Wiglaf's example act as a lesson upon you. The spirit of war in this context is loyalty, to act for what you have sworn your word to, even unto death. While all men may face death without exception, your deeds and ambitions will surpass you. I quote High One in Havamal 78. Cattle die, and kinsmen die, and so one dies oneself. One thing now that never dies, the fame of a dead man's deed. In an age of loose words, be a Wiglaf to that which you swear upon. Chapter 5. The War Pagan. Our accounts are thus made, and their meanings are clear. So what of the pagans of the modern day? We are, as of now, in a time of growing war. The long-held peace laid down by the Helsinki Accords discarded, all now feel the tides of violence swelling, none as much as the people of the Rus. An age of shattered shields has been with us long before we came back to this world, and it will outlive our children's children. For too long have we suckled at the breast of peace, remiss in the absence of conflict to grow weak in body and mind, consumerism to replace wisdom, superheroes in place of the gods. We enjoyed the bounty of the peace made by our forefathers, a peace rightfully deserved, but taken too far. We have forgotten struggle, we have lost the spirit of war. The spirit of war is as much in the slaying of a foe as in the overcoming of great non-violent challenges. The Redbeard found laughter in the slaying of the host of Thrym, but struggled greatly to don the bridal veil out of embarrassment. If Funard himself were to repeat each of the 2 tasks, which do you think he would gladly redo? Which embodies more the spirit of war, and how gloriously our Thunderer embodies that virtue? Some men have strength in body, but weakness in mind. Some have wills of iron, but cannot fight. Many have neither, few have both. The spirit of war, therefore, is to manifest in every aspect of your character. You must ask yourself what you are capable of and what you are not. You must ask yourself if you relinquish in the safety of your abilities, hoping to the gods that none may find your weakness. If this is the case, you do not embody the spirit of war. You must become a force both unto and upon yourself. As a pagan, you must become both the greatest tutor and sworn enemy of your own ego, to break down the barriers of fear and coping mechanism. You must become as Beowulf became, and Sigurd became. Both were born men, but became heroes. You must become a hero. You must be that which you desire to see in the world, and surpass even that. You must not wait for a greater leader than what you can be to take leadership. You must assume that mantle and become that leader. You must take up the spirit of war as a virtue and start to discard the spirit of peace that has defined our generations of late. You must be the war pagan to overcome all that the wolf's age throws at you and meet the world around you without hesitation. If these words are falling on your ears and you do not believe it applies to you, you are the exact person this is addressing. There is no exception to the gods, and there can be no differing expectation. All your kins must adapt, all your kins must succeed. If one in a clan is weak, then all are susceptible, pagan or not. We must become intolerant to those intolerant of us, and exclusionary of those that exclude us. We will not be a minority religion for long, and may we start acting righteously in that fact. We must overcome all obstacles. Runestones exist only for the strong. This is a call to war of the most vital, a war of morality. It is a war against the serpent that resides within the thoughts and deeds of us all, the venomous portion of our being that drains our life force and wallows in the decay of our will to power. To quote Palinuk, "Our great war's a spiritual war. Our great depression is our lives." End quote. Pagans are not the middle children of history. We have to become the fathers of the future. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fire and Hammer podcast. In closing, I will leave you with a quote from Veluspa 26. "In swelling rage then rose up Thor, seldom he sits when he such things hears, and the oaths were broken, the words and bonds, the mighty pledges between them made. May the spirit of war guide your deeds. Hail the gods!"